Hey, what is up, guys? We are back with a new video. I am here toyed with my man over here, Justin, the DIY audio guy. How's it going, Justin?
It's going great, man. What have you been up to? We've been off for 2 weeks. Why have we been off for 2 weeks?
Well, 1 week was for you, right? Or was it,
I,
or
I
are they
want
both
to.
for me?
I think maybe so because you had gone to see the eclipse and you had
Oh, that's
messaged me. And
right.
you were all like, "I'm
Yeah,
stuck in traffic. We've been trying to fight this eclipse traffic," and I'm all like, "Yeah, and I need to work on a video. So let's take a night off."
that's right. We went to the full eclipse, and then last week I just came back from Axpona. Now, if you guys have questions about Axpona or any questions you want, throw them in the chat section. We'll make sure to answer those as best as we can and when we can get to them. As we always say, if you throw a super chat down, it will definitely be answered. But either way, we just love to hear from you guys. So we like to answer this. This is what we like to do. We enjoy this. We like answering your questions. So yeah, I really loved Exponent, but I wasn't the only one that went to a trade show of sorts. You went to a trade show too, right?
I did. I went to a trade show. I went to Knowledge Fest. Have you ever heard of Knowledge Fest?
I don't, but it sounds very well. It sounds like you can get a lot of information.
That's kind of the idea. So, for those who do not know, Knowledge Fest is industry training. It's intended for industry professionals. So, it's kind of a trade show for people who are already in the business. So, it's not something a consumer would go to. And it's, hey, Bobby B, fire away questions anytime, my friend. I'll do my best to make up an answer. In fact, we might repost the question because it was a really good question that had, I thought, a brilliant answer. So
Yeah.
we'd be glad to repost it and talk about it again. So this is it's industry training, unlike something like the Consumer Electronics Show that you went to, which is an industry trade show. The purpose of this is primarily training. And so the day was just, if you've ever been to like a business training session, it's just you go into one room and listen to someone who is supposedly an expert talk. Then you go to the next room and hear an expert talk, and then the next room. And there's some cool things I got to see and do as a part of that training that we can talk about as it kind of comes up.
Was there a cost to that, or was that free, or what was it?
You just went blank. Was that on my end or your end?
I don't know. I just said, was there a cost to that?
Maybe these guys.
All right. Well, we're just going to pretend like it's free then because he doesn't know.
So Nick's audio cut out on my end and I couldn't hear Nick.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Well, we don't know. All right. So back to Axpona. Axpona was really cool, by the way. For anyone that doesn't know,
I can hear you now. My battery's died.
It's basically a speaker trade show where you can go see a bunch of audio equipment. So you see amplifiers, you can see speakers. Now, some of these speakers are equipment that you'll never see again in your life. Like there was one room that was like over $4 million worth of equipment, amplifiers, speakers, etc. And it did sound good. I don't know if it sounded $4 million good, but it sounded good. So yeah, so it's really cool. If you ever get a chance to go to Axpona, I think it's a really good show to go to because, like I said, you'll be able to experience a bunch of speakers that you've never been able to. It's basically like a big hotel, and every room you go in is like a different audio, designer. So it might be an amplifier designer, might be a speaker designer, might be whatever. It was cool. It was
So
really
Nick,
awesome.
is it a trade show just for people in the industry, or is it a show open to consumers?
No, anyone can go. Anyone can go.
Okay.
In fact, they actually sell a lot of the gear afterwards. So after the show is over, they'll sell it like at a huge discount for people that want to go. Yeah, because they're like, oh yeah, this is a trade show special. One pair of speakers for this much. So a lot of people are passing out things on Saturday, like, hey, buy our speakers before you leave. We don't want to bring them back home.
Oh yeah, I get that. I get.
So True Voice of Reason actually has our first question. He said, how did the Acora speakers sound? The Acora speakers, for those that don't know, are made out of solid material of rock. Usually they had some made out of granite and they had some made out of amethyst. And the amethysts were beautiful. I mean, they lit them up from inside and you could see the quartz veins running through. I mean, they were just gorgeous. And the cool thing about the Acora speakers are they're not necessarily really thick. It's about 1 inch thick of material all the way around. But because the material is so dead, they don't need any type of bracing at all. So the speakers, although they looked like they weighed a ton, actually didn't weigh very much at all. It was pretty cool. And they were a triangle shape, which also helps. Now, how did they sound? They sounded really good. Interesting enough, those are using DIY drivers, by the way. If you look
Oh,
closely, you'll know
yeah.
exactly which ones they're using. You can buy
I'll
them
have to
from Maddie
watch the
Sound.
video a little bit closer and see if I can pick them out then.
You can pick them. Yeah, you'll be able to pick them out.
Maybe they're ones I've used before.
They are not. Not
Okay.
that I've ever seen you use, at least. But yeah, so you could actually, you can see which ones that they use. But they really did sound really good. And it was one of those things you can tell when you're listening to a dead speaker, you can tell, right? Like when you're listening
No
to
resonance.
exactly when you hear, you hear like the continuation of sound that's not supposed to be there. And the core speaker, you didn't hear any of that. I don't believe I'm going to be making a speaker out of amethyst anytime soon. But yeah. Hey.
Did you happen to run into Aaron from Aaron's Audio Corner while you were up at how do you pronounce it? Axpona?
Axpona. Yeah, actually,
Axpona.
I made it. I actually texted him and was like, "Hey, man, I want to meet up with you," and we talked for a little while at the very beginning of Saturday. I also met up with Cheap Audio Man, so Randy, if you guys know him. Met up with a bunch of people. Steve Gutenberg, the audiophiliac.
Yeah, you used to watch his stuff a lot. Yeah.
Yep, a bunch of people. I mean, that's the thing too. Like, if you want to ever meet these people, like, there's a good chance you're going to run into them. Chana as well. There was a lot of people. All right, Bobby Burkett had a question. And by the way, good to see Living Loud with Andy in the chat.
Awesome. So this is a question that that Uncle Bobby B shot me earlier. I don't know when, this weekend. I don't remember when, but and so he asked this, and I said just a minute ago that he should probably ask it in the chat because it's a pretty good question. I don't have a router table, so that's a problem sometimes, but I do have a handheld router. You think I can mount my ABS amp rack to a table with clamps, clamp a jig guide, and then use a hand router to do round over along the rack. So ABS plastic, I've used 1/4 inch whenever I do ABS amp racks. So it's not thick material. So the issue with trying to put a round over or a bead or a chamfer on that without a router table is a safety issue.
Well, here's the thing, Bobby. You have a table. I know you have a kitchen table, man. We're just going to cut a hole in the kitchen table, throw your router in there. You're good to go. Your wife will not care. Just put a Lazy Susan over it on top. You can actually hook it up to the router, the Lazy Susan part, and then just turn the router on whenever you want to use the Lazy Susan.
Oh, yeah.
Problem solved. You now have a router table.
10,000 RPM Lazy Susan. There you go. So how would you do this safely, Nick? What is your answer to this question? I'm just kind of curious. How would you safely?
I just told you how I would do it. First, I would get your kitchen table out. Bam. If your wife says no to the kitchen table, I am positive that you have some type of, like, I don't know, end table, side table, some type of table. I would do that.
In all seriousness, though, that it's very common for people to make a DIY router table where they just take their router inside of its fixed base and cut a hole in the piece of plywood with like a hole saw and position the router underneath it. So you've now got a router table, and then you can, I've seen people clamp it to the side of their table saw and various things. So that's a thing that you could do, like put the board over a trash can or something. Yeah. So you can rig up a router table just by putting a router underneath a piece of plywood. So that's a thing you can do.
And like Andy says, just give her access to Target and Amazon and you'll get the approval.
What I suggested was to clamp it and then use whatever you're using as a template, and clamp that down and make sure that the bearing is running against, say you clamp it to the edge of a table and you want to like cut a straight line with the router. You want to clamp that down to the table and put the bearing against either your template that'll be between the table and your ABS plastic. So the bearing will ride on either the table or the template. Because if you don't do that, because it's 1/4 inch material, you'll never be able to get that bearing on it, right? So that's what the main concern. That and 1/4 inch ABS, it's pretty rigid, but it'll get kind of floppy if you set the router down on the edge. It will bend, it'll deflect. So it's kind of a safety issue. Yeah, so you need to make sure it's supported in addition to being clamped down, and you want that bearing on something besides the plastic because a 1/4 inch isn't much material, and that's true whether you're putting a round over or a chamfer with a router on anything that's a 1/4 inch, because you just don't have anything to grip with. If you were in a router table, you could put the template on top and put the bearing against the template, something like that.
Yeah. Now, you know, I will say this: if you were like using a hand router, for example, to do this, um, one thing I would actually say, in my opinion, is if you were doing something bigger, like thicker, say 3/4 inch, and you
Right.
want to do a big round over on it, my what I would say, my first advice would be do a little at a time.
Mm.
Continue to go deeper. Don't try to hog it off all at once, especially with a hand router. That's not a good idea. It's not even necessarily a good idea to do it with a regular router, just take a little off at a time. But in general, really think about that too. Take a little bit off at a time.
And again, it's going to depend on the router that you've got. My Bosch
Cool.
routers, I wouldn't hesitate to use the cheap small radius round over bit and just take a whole chunk out at once. But the Ryobi battery powered router that I have, that thing is gutless, man. It is completely gutless. And I, even when something like a small round over or small chamfer, sometimes 2 passes are the way to go.
Yep. Yeah. Multiple passes is the way to go. It's just like you do on the highway. You pass a guy, and then if he gives you a bad look, you slow down and then you pass him again.
Yeah. I've spent a lot of time on the road this weekend. And I did a whole lot of that.
And then you just smile and wave, boys. Smile and wave. All right. Daniel Miller's got a great question for me. How's that 10-inch coaxial home theater speaker project coming along? Have you seen this one? Yeah.
You showed the design on our last live stream, or you showed it to me after the stream, maybe one of the two. But I've seen your SketchUp drawing.
I think I showed it after. Yeah, I think I showed it to you, and I showed it to my
patrons,
because the patrons we're going over this. So I've run into one small issue with this, which is actually not a big issue. It's a small issue. I realized I didn't have some of what I needed to finish the project. So what I actually needed to finish the project was quite simple. It's just a terminal cup on the back, and I didn't have one. So that's coming tomorrow. So I'm hoping to take some measurements tomorrow.
I have pretty much decided that I'm going to stop using terminal cups, and I'm just going to go with the post that Parts Express sells. That's it's got a push terminal. Yeah, that's got a push terminal, or I guess it's a 5-way binding post, push terminal, and then you just thread the nut that comes on with it inside the box. So I'm tired of cutting circles for terminal cups.
Those are good, although a lot of them don't work on 3/4 inch material, so you have to cut something in
the ones I've been using do just fine for 3/4 inch material. They're plenty long for it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm done with terminal cups. I'm just tired of dealing with them.
So this is the design that I have. It's about a 30-degree angle, which is very similar to what most of these do. This is a 10-inch compression coaxial. In the center is a compression driver with a waveguide. It'd be very similar to something like a JTR 110, a couple other things. We actually have a whole discussion going on the forum, but these are designed so you can put them along the wall like this and shoot into your seating area, like down here, or put them on the ceiling like so, and then sit down here and use them as like Atmos speakers. Now, there will also be like a standard box too. So if someone said, hey, look, I just want to use these up front, you could use these up front. So this would be very similar to DIY Sounds Group's project that they did a long time ago, the Volt 10, I think is what they called them. But this will be a higher end compression coaxial, a much better compression coaxial. This one will actually use a Celestion compression coaxial that is, in their terminology, concentrically aligned. I haven't tested that because I haven't tested that part
this is
yet.
Okay. These concentric, you got the tweeter with the horn down going into where the dust cap would be. I'm shocked by the number of speakers like that I saw on display this weekend.
You know what? And not
Yeah.
just even at Axpona too. Axpona, there's a lot that are
That
doing this
seems to
now.
be the trend. I think DB Drive was one of them. And I talked to the guy from the DB Drive, and this guy worked for Lightning Audio back in the day. I think he said he started it. I don't remember his name. I got his business card living here somewhere. And about half the speakers that DB Drive had on display were high efficiency drivers, kind of intended for ATVs and motorcycles and stuff, and water resistant, waterproof, with a lot of they've got that horn right in the middle, and just that concentric thing with the compression driver down in the down where the dust where the pole vent is at. And so it seems like that's kind of trendy, and I think in the car audio world it's just efficient and loud, which is what a lot of car
So
audio is, instead of sounding good. So
well, efficient and loud can be good, especially for home theater, as long as it sounds good. Now, the thing is, if you were to buy this design from, like, say, a JTR or something, and there's a lot of companies that do this. I'm just, for whatever reason, I just have JTR in my head for whatever reason. You're looking at $1,300 each speaker,
wow.
and this you should be able to do for about $300 each speaker. So for half the price
Much less than half the price.
of one, yeah. So a quarter of the price for two, yeah.
Yeah. I like what you said, how you
It's
can use
pretty
those
crazy.
in different configurations for different purposes. It can be, you could have like 4 of them,
Wedges,
and you could
that's
put
it.
them in multiple places in your Atmos system. So I like that.
Yep. You can put them, up on the top. Like I said, you can use them as rear speakers. They're very multifunctional. I like
Put
the
my
idea
screen
of
up. I
it.
want to show
So
those binding posts I was talking about.
yeah, of course. Let's pop this, guys. Where else are you going to get like this cool of
All right.
information?
So
Like,
the one
which
that I have
binding post
highlighted that'll
spot?
be on the right-hand side of your screen. These are the ones, Nick, you were talking about, that won't fit in 3/4 inch material. And
Yeah, you have to be
yeah,
careful
they're
which ones you
$8
get.
at
Yeah.
Parts Express, but for $2 more, you get like these, and they have them in the nickel satin as well. So for $10, and these right here easily fit in 3/4 inch material with a little room to wiggle.
So funny story. I was at Axpona and I looked at Dayton Audio. Parts Express was there, and they had the Opal One bookshelves. Have you seen these
I
yet?
was in the middle of watching Aaron's review on them and had something pop up and couldn't finish the video, but they look really good. They're
Okay.
using the Epic, right?
The Epic
Yeah, and
driver
the passage on the back.
and 2 passive radiators on the back. I'm going to try to find a rear photo
Yes.
because, oh my gosh. Oh yeah, here's a rear photo.
Yep.
They
The satin
use
ones.
the exact same
Yeah, the
binding
satin
posts.
ones.
Yeah. Well, the gold on the black and satin on the
Oh,
white. Yeah.
okay. Color coded. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So they use the exact same binding posts on those. Um, I heard these. They have some amazing deep low bass, which is surprising. For a speaker like that. Of course, we know the Epic can do that. Um, Here's the interesting thing that I find about these between you and I. These are $800 a
Between you and
pair.
I and our whole
The Epic.
audience.
Oh, are they still listening?
They're chatting. I hear El Fuego's in here bragging about his new build that Cornut did. So Cornut
So
works at a shop and apparently did a fantastic job on that bill. I've seen pictures and it's beautiful.
we'll have to see
Yes.
that. So these Opal ones are $800. If you want to DIY some speakers, you could do the Epic Hi-Fi for $1,000. And what most people complain about these is they're not as efficient. With the second woofer, you get a lot more efficiency off of that. Plus 6
Okay.
decibels basically. So you could do like the Epic Hi-Fi, and you could get you'd get the CSS tweeter versus the Dayton
Right.
reference. So if you're into DIY, which you're watching this show, that might be an option.
Probably a thing you're into.
Probably a thing. Might be. I don't know. All right. I had a question. Oh, next year you have to get there, although I'm not sure. Bass That Hurts was with me. Bass That Hurts actually came with me to Axpona. He heard them. I'll have to get an idea of what he thinks about it later. I'll say this. Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to ask you a question. I'll ask you a question. Let me share my screen first. Actually, you know what? I'll just share this screen. Since I'm already sharing this screen, why share a new screen? There's no reason. Let's come here to specs. I had this question asked to me today, and I think it's a great question. So say you're looking at subwoofers like this GRS 10 SW4
Okay.
polycone
Yeah.
subwoofer, which I did. I did the ISO
Right.
100
Right.
with this, and that thing went way below
Now it'd
20
be the
hertz.
now it'd
Just
be the ISO
awesome, right?
120.
Yeah, now the ISO 120, unless you get it on sale. And his question was, how did you get it to 20 hertz when the product spec says the frequency response is only to 34 hertz? Ah, I think this is really one of those questions that I think really is more applicable to subwoofers than like any other
Right. Right.
speaker, right? Like, because tweeter, you pretty much know, okay, I don't want to cross over past here or whatever. But subwoofer, it's like, wait, it says it only goes to 34 hertz. How can you get
So
20 hertz out of it?
the this is kind of ties into what I learned at Knowledge Fest. One of the training sessions talked about this very thing. And the trainer, I'm not going to say who it was. I don't want to, give away the industry secrets because it's, you pay out the nose to send employees there if you have a car stereo shop. He said that think about it like this: below a driver's resonant frequency, the suspension of the driver, the spider, is what's controlling the cone. Above it, above that resonant frequency, the electromagnet's controlling the cone, the magnet and the voice coil working together. And anytime you're playing below the resonant frequency, you're basically asking for distortion. And he said, in subwoofers, we don't have a choice because that's how subwoofers just are. But for your mid-range, for your tweeter, if you're playing below the resonant frequency, you're going to have distortion. And the rule of thumb we've always used is here on our show is that you cut the you double the FS for your tweeters for the crossover point for the tweeter, and that tells me you probably should be
Yeah,
doing the same
rule of
thing
thumb.
for
Yeah.
your mid ranges as well. But the subwoofer, you have to play it below its resonant frequency. And what I tell people whenever they ask about that kind of thing, the specs listed on a driver for their usable frequency range are almost completely meaningless. I don't care what driver you're looking at. I don't care who made it. I'm not picking on Parts Express. Alpine does the same thing. Kicker does the same thing. I don't care what brand it is. There's a number there. The number doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, let's be honest. Any subwoofer you play, you can get 10 hertz out
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
Now, at what volume?
Right.
That's a whole
And
nother
what kind of
story.
distortion
You
and
get
at what other problems,
Yeah,
right?
what distortion, what volume,
How
what,
long will it survive at full tilt at 10 hertz? Right.
in this particular case, I would pay very little attention to the product specification for low end frequency response. Almost every subwoofer you look at is going to say probably 20 hertz on up. Now, with the GRS, I think the main reason why they did it on this GRS, and there are industry standards to give you that
Right,
number,
right.
but I think in particular, the reason why they did on the GRS is because they decided that, hey, you probably want a smaller sealed box for this 1 cubic foot. And so the vented F3 is about 38 hertz. So let's say around 34. In order to get 20 hertz out of that subwoofer, which I did, it required a huge box. I think it was like 6 cubic feet. Now I did 4 of them, but it needed like 6 cubic feet in an isobaric configuration. So yeah, I mean, most people aren't going to do that. But I mean, I even looked at the Ultimax, and I think the Ultimax said nothing past 20 hertz. Well, we know that's silly.
Yeah.
We know the
Oh,
Ultimax
yeah.
can do significantly further.
Well, think
Yeah.
about the Savard build I did with the 4.6.5s. The resonant frequency on those drivers is up in the 40, 50 hertz range because they're just small, little stiff drivers. And the box I put them in was huge. I think that thing total was 5 cubic feet. I think it was like 2.5 per side or something. And it was too big and it was too heavy, and I put a ton of bracing in it. One reason why I took it apart and tossed the box was because it was just too heavy to move around. So I needed to cut it up to move it around, and several other reasons why. I don't know. It never built a box quite like that before, and so I wasn't happy with the result. But yeah, I used an extended bass shelf for that, and so the idea behind extended bass shelf is you just drive that tuning frequency down really low, and the output plummets at the lower frequencies, but you get the low end extension.
Yeah, and you can make up for that with gain, with either room gain, cabin
Or 4
gain.
drivers instead of 1, or et cetera, et cetera.
Right. However you want to do it, or maybe a halfway. Some people will do this, like for example, like if you're doing a a build with multiple woofers. You might do a halfway where you do extended base shelf on, half of it, and then the other half you don't. So
Highlight
that way you
RVH's
can
comment right
increase
there.
your
There you
effect
go.
rate.
RVH's
What?
comments right on it right there. It's like, it says 25 to 400 hertz, but put it in a big box and go crazy. And that's,
Yeah, or sealed, right?
yeah.
Like we talked about this on the show. My 21-inch subwoofers, I don't think they're rated to go low at all. But when you put them in a sealed box and you put them in a room and you put those big of woofers in a room like that with that much sensitivity, you get some pretty great room gain where it makes up all those frequencies. I can play 10 hertz just fine in there with absolutely no issues. It's great. Yeah, there is a good question. This is a good point. Hoffman's Iron Law.
Mm-hmm.
Small, loud, and low. You got two of them. You sacrifice one of them.
Yep. That is it. That's exactly it.
That's the Opal One, right? The Opal One sacrifice, like I think Aaron tested it and he said it was like 78 decibels or 75 decibels sensitive or something.
I need to watch the whole video. I was distracted while watching it and not paying close attention as I should have. So, what else did you see at Axpona that you thought was really cool? Do you have any pictures that you want to show us from Axpona?
Well, I shared a lot of them in that video, so you should have watched it.
All right. Well, I'm gonna.
Yeah, I'll share some.
If you want to pull
some
some up, I'm going to share something here. So let's just pop my screen up.
Too late. I already got my pictures.
Oh.
So there's the Opal.
Those are shiny.
Yeah, that's the rear of it, right, with the two passive radiators, and you can kind of see the binding posts right there that you're talking about. Pretty sure there's
they are. They look like it.
And then this looks like a trunk. My understanding is this is a version of their signature series with the truncated frame. And I don't want to say for sure, but I think these ones were actually powered. Yeah, there you go. Oh, there's a video. It's the M4. And then they got these tower speakers. I don't know anything about the tower speakers. I didn't ask them about them, but they're trying to go back to the old thing, like the old look. I don't know how I feel about these. I mean, it looks like a diffraction chaos.
Yeah. What are those big amps on the ground there? What the hell?
So these are their new amplifiers. I think they're $800 or $900 a piece. They're like, I think they bridge to 400 watts. They're an AB amplifier, 200 by 2 stereo.
This is designed to compete with a Crown or something like that, or a Behringer.
Yeah, I mean, 400 watts probably not gonna. Probably not going to compete with a Crown, but compete with something.
Yeah, they look nice. I like the look.
Yeah, they do look nice, and they were the ones that were powering the Opals the entire time. So yeah, and I got a bunch of other cool pictures, but these are all for some reason all date not. Oh, you know why? Because I've renamed them. So these were cool.
Wow.
Look at these. I gotta mute these.
What's going on here?
Can I mute that? Yeah. So this is one called Endow Audio. They actually 3D printed this horn, and then you see all these mid ranges. Those mid ranges are all.
Those look like the little square frame Celestion drivers that Celestion makes.
They might be actually. There's a tweeter in there, a compression tweeter in there, and my thing is yelling at me. So there's a compression tweeter in the middle, and then we have all those mid ranges on the outside, and they're completely time aligned. So it does that to help fill the room with sound. They were really interesting speakers. I actually talked a little bit about more in depth in the video on an Axpona about those, but I did like them. But see, that's how it works. Concentric tweeter mid ranges.
I don't know about them having a whole bunch of small mid ranges. I'm not sure that's they're kind of aimed at the wrong direction, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's like a presence. It's supposed to like fill the room with sound. So you're actually, in this particular case, you're actually trying to use the reflections to fill the room. Now, these are focals,
right? Doing the whole Bose thing where you're going to use reflections to fill the room, which I think was probably
exactly. Yeah, like the 901.
I mean, was probably pretty hokey if you think about it, and there's better ways to fill the room. So hey, there's a cool question. Do you see the question?
Now,
decking.
but what do you think of these focals, Roger?
They're focals, which means that no human being can afford them.
That's my son next door.
Yes, I
Look how
recognize him.
tiny he's huge. He's like 50 inches tall, I
Yeah.
think, or so. So it's not like those are huge. And that's my friend Robbie next
Okay.
to him, the creeper back there. Right? He's creeping back
Those
there.
are huge.
That's him.
Yeah.
All right, what was the question?
Will a properly sized passive radiator be able to reach the same F3 as a properly sized port in the same box?
What do you think?
Absolutely. The problem is that the roll off with a passive will be steeper. So you would need to tune the passive a smidge lower to get the same F3 as a ported box. If I got that right, the passive has a steeper roll off compared to a port. Is that right?
You do. Yeah. So there's a couple disadvantages of passive radiator, and we're hitting on two of them right now. So one of them is that it has a steeper roll off, so you'll get less room gain. You don't get a lot of gain anyway from a ported. So to me, that's kind of like a wash. If you're tuning a passive radiator and a port, the same tuning frequency with the same equivalent size box, okay? When I say equivalent size enclosure, we're going to remove the port and it'd be similar internal volume, right? If we were to do that, the passive radiator will tune a little bit higher in frequency, meaning now not a lot, like, and it depends on which one, maybe 2 decibels higher or something. So some people would say, well, relatively the same thing, but it is less. So you do get a little bit less output. The advantages of the passive radiator is you don't have to worry about the port noise, right? So if you got a long port, you're going to get resonance of some kind. You don't have to worry about that. So it's a trade-off, and everything in speaker building and designing is always going to be a trade-off.
Right.
You got to ask yourself, what's more important,
and
the girl or the car?
And so the other thing to remember about the passive is that a passive can be expensive. A passive is much cheaper than using some wood you already have on hand to build a port, or even buying a flared port tube from Parts Express, or whatever you want to do, big ass ports, et cetera, et cetera. So the cost is a thing that I think makes them prohibitive. So it is my opinion, and you can tell me what you think about my opinion. There are 2 times when you should use a passive radiator. All right. Time number 1 is when you have a small box, and when you've got a small box, you end up with a long port, and then you've got to make the box bigger to fit the long port, and then you don't have a small box anymore. So if you're worried about, I call it the small box problem. As the box gets smaller, port gets longer, the passive radiator is going to solve the small box problem. So that's the first time. And the second time is when you want to play around with something cool and do something different. Those are the 2 times.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's more reasons besides just the small box problem, which seems like we should create a pill for that. But besides the small box pill problem, we got the issue of resonances, and a lot of people don't pay attention to resonances in port. And this is one of the design flaws that I see with a lot of people when they're designing speakers and subwoofers, is that their resonance ends up being in one of their major areas that they're playing their speaker in. And because of that, depending on how bad the resonance is, I should say, it's audible. And so with a subwoofer, we typically say, twice of whatever you're going to cross it over with on the pass. I'm sorry, low pass. So if the low pass that you're crossing over at, like, say 80 hertz, then you typically don't want your resonance, your first port resonance, to be lower than 160 hertz. That's really hard to do with a lot of subwoofers.
Right.
So a lot of people still just don't pay attention. But if you're doing like a mid-range or something like that, and the thing that a lot of people don't realize is a resonance doesn't just happen at 120 hertz, right? What's it called? First resonance. Port resonance.
Right.
Not only port resonance, first. So it happens every octave, every doubling, right? So 120, 240,
480,
480, right? 960. Keep going, right? So we got to keep that in mind. So if you're doing something, and maybe it's a mid-range, and your mid-range is starting to first port resonance at, say, 120 hertz. Well, do you want resonance at 120, 240, 408, all these places? Or or would you rather put a passive radiator in there and test it out?
Yeah.
Try to get rid of that, or get a different driver.
Any thoughts?
All right, RVH answered our question.
Pete from across the street's got a question that's definitely a question for you. Any thoughts on the new 3DC from CSS? Looks like a cool DIY, could be a great value.
I haven't seen it. They didn't bring it to Axpona, which was disappointing. I was a little disappointed that they didn't. They brought their new Tory speakers, which were kind of cool, and they were hooked up to Orchard Audio amplifiers. So there were those. I'm gonna look up the 3DC because I have not seen the 3DC.
Cool. While you're looking that up, put my screen up real quick. I want to show one of the coolest things I got to see at Knowledge Fest.
Is it called 3DC, Pete? Because I don't see it on their website. All right, what did you say? Put your screen up. I'm sorry. Sure.
So this is an F350 Platinum that a stereo shop that's local to the show I went to put together. And before I show you the stereo equipment, check this out. I don't know if y'all can hear the audio or not. Can you hear the audio?
Yeah. Oh, no, not in the truck. No.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah.
That thing is, I mean, this is a $100,000 truck before you start modifying it. So I don't know, RVH. I don't, depends on the car, man.
Whether it's the car or the girl. Well, you know what? You guys get to compromise on it. You get to make that compromise of that choice. I'm taking the girl.
Yeah, I did publish a short on it.
I already took the girl.
Yeah, I did publish a short on that earlier. And so that was, so that truck had a ton of gear in it. And let me see if I remember what all it had. I might throw some pictures up. Let me show you the doors on this thing. Let's see here. Which one of these buttons shares the screen? This one. There we go. So it's kind of hard to see through the grill, but that is a 10-inch, a 6.5, and a tweeter. Yeah. These are ground zero drivers. These are their pro audio drivers. You can see the surrounds or that kind of accordion style surround. So those are definitely designed to be loud and efficient as pro audio drivers. There's the rear door. And I mean, just absolutely amazing. There's a really bad photo of the A-pillar tweeters. There's a better photo. And amazing truck. All the amps were in a subwoofer box that they got from one of those companies that makes fancy boxes, and they gutted the box and put the amps in it. So it's an amazing, I'm going to do a more detailed video of this. In the bed of the truck, 4 15s on 6,000 watts in a bandpass box. Plus, and we were talking about it earlier, look at the drivers, Nick. They're concentric with the horns in the middle of them. As kind of the stunt wall. And look,
that one, the horn actually comes out of the middle of the woofer. That's interesting.
And you can see how big the room is, right? It's a big ballroom. It was at the Music City Center down in Nashville. And when they got it running, because when they showed up, it wasn't done yet. They were putting it together the last minute. These guys were hustling. That thing shook the entire kind of big grand ballroom that we were in. You could hear it all the way across, loud and clean, man. That thing just really shook everything, and it was a pretty impressive build. The guys building it said that 10 days ago it had 0 aftermarket audio equipment in it, and they did the whole audio build in 10 days.
Oh, nice. Oh, Sean joined us. Hey, Sean, how's it going, man? I have not seen Sean in a while. It's good to see him back on the stream. That's a pretty cool build. I like the etching on the.
Oh yeah.
I guess I'm assuming that's acrylic etching.
Yeah. I have a hard time getting the shots without my reflection inside of it, but you can kind of see the 15-inch subwoofers in there, the lighting and everything. Pretty cool ride, and really loud and fun little toy there. Fun, very expensive toy.
Nate Jones said he rebuilt a pair of Infinity RS625s with all Dayton RS drivers, including 2 passive radiators. Turned out great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like that. All right, I'm going to share my screen because I want to show you something. So one of the people that I was surprised was there was at Axpona was SB Acoustics.
Ah.
And I knew that I had a contact with SB Audience that
Mhm.
also did SB Acoustics. And I was like, I wonder if Mark's here. Sure enough, he was there. And he actually saw me go in the room. I didn't see him. He saw me go in the room. So I was like, all right, that's not him. And I'm like, is he here? And then sure enough, he came in and met me. He's like, oh, Nick, I saw you go in. I had to finish the conversation real quick. And he's like, hey, I want to get you some drivers for the channel. And what you just showed me, the accordion surround, reminded me of these. Take a look at these. These are pretty cool. So these are Satori coaxials, concentric.
Yes.
So when we talk about concentric, by the way, that means that the sound that leaves the tweeter leaves the woofer at the exact same time. So they're perfectly time aligned. Now, what that means is that when you go up, down, left, or right on the speaker, technically, if there was no other issues, physics, which there is, you would get a perfect off-axis response because there's no time difference between them.
And
All
and
right.
I'll say this.
Now look at this, sir.
No one I talked to at one of these shows verified that they were indeed concentric. They all were saying, oh yeah, it's a compression driver down in a horn. So I don't know if they were or not, but you know, if they are, it should sound better. That's the reason why you do it.
Let me see if I can pull this up.
Yeah,
a little
you don't
bit
get those subtle
bigger,
phasing issues when you have a concentric driver. The phasing issue.
Can you see
yeah,
this
a little bit.
But you can see the
yes.
surround. What's it look like? It looks like an accordion surround because it is, but it's a rubber accordion surround
and not paper.
Now not paper. And the reason why they did it like this is so that when the tweeter, because basically the woofer becomes a horn, right? The woofer becomes the horn as far as the actual wave guide. And so instead of having a high roll surround, because you would lose, you know, that's how you get your excursion for your woofer. Instead of having that high roll surround, they did this accordion surround. So that way you don't get the diffraction that you'd get off the high roll surround. It's pretty cool. I like the idea of this. And I was like, dude, why did you cut a hole? All right, because I was curious, because you see, it looks like there's a hole here. It's not. That's actually just rubber there. I wasn't touching it, but it's a really cool looking design. So I might be getting some of these in to do a project with. What do you think I should do?
Ooh, 7.5-inch driver. I mean, why not do like a bunch of them in a line array?
Oh, that's a cool idea. I didn't think of that.
I mean, other than that, there's the things you're already doing.
Yeah. I'd like to get my hands on some of those, some Satori driver. Well, Sean, tell me what you would do with these. I'm curious. I mean, our thought was to create some smaller surround sound style speakers that you could use for like Atmos, but something that looks nice for
something
the lights
like
as well.
what you're already doing. Yeah,
you don't have to. Yeah, I don't want it to be exactly what I'm doing, though. You know, something maybe thin that can go like real close to the wall or something.
If they had a smaller one,
just definitely
a 6.5. I think it'd be cool to build pods up on a dash. I don't know what the bass response would be like. That's why I may as well go with something smaller. But pods up on a dash with a concentric driver with a 6.5-inch up on a dash, that would be cool.
That would be
very cool.
So they have different sizes, by the way. I think this is the one we were talking about. I honestly don't remember if it was a 6-inch or the 7.5 or whatever, but they're about 90 decibels. Dan asked what sensitivity they were. About 90 decibels. Sean said 5 surrounds exactly. I think it would be cool, like to do 5 and maybe do like 3 different box designs with them. So that way you could do like a rear surround box design and do like a front, speaker box design, center. I don't know. I think that'd be kind of cool. A KEF R3 clone. Ooh, I like this idea.
Yeah.
Drop spieling enclosures. I like that too.
Yeah, that would be handy. I mean, if you could just aim them at the listening position from the drop ceiling. Yeah, that'd be cool. Instead of like doing a coaxial in ceiling speaker, use some of those.
Keep them coming. We want to hear more, but we're gonna go on while we're talking.
All right.
Any thoughts on the new line of Cerwin?
I will
Vega
show you some
speakers from
pictures.
them? So I don't know. Is he talking about DIY? Is he talking about the home
So
theater
you got a
speakers?
chance to
Which ones
see
he
those
talking
when
about?
you were at the Consumer Electronics Show.
The home
Yeah.
theater ones?
And what we
Yeah.
learned,
I have
what we
some
learned at
ideas on
that
those.
show is, hey, there's someone who wants to promote our channel with their bots.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and just
Awesome.
kick them if you can. There you go. Anyway, so if you'll
All right.
if
So
you'll
keep
go
going.
ahead and show my screen, we'll talk Servo Vega. So
Yeah.
the big news with
I
Servo
didn't
Vega,
notice.
some of you probably already know this, is that Servo Vega had been broken into different versions. It's pro audio version, it's home audio version, it's car audio version. And prior to CES this year, the three now are owned by the same company again. So all Servo Vega brands are now housed by the same company. They're owned by the same company that owns Diamond Audio. And this is the display, and you can see like the DB drive back in the background. This is the display they had. And so this looks like a kicker, right? It looks like a kicker with the rib surround and I mean, it really looks like a kicker, like they were trying to imitate one. And you can see beside it that massive coaxial. And we were talking a second ago, I was saying that these horns right there in the middle is one of these drivers with a horn in it. Are all over the place up there at Knowledge Fest. That seems to be the trendy thing. And on the back side of that is they had some amplifiers and I think a DSP. You can see the DSP here with all the RCA sticking out of it. And let's see, another picture. There we go. We got, looks like a kind of basic, dish cone driver. So I didn't get a chance to talk to the Servo Vega rep when I was there. I just didn't manage to pin him down in his booth when I was there. And so what we see on display at the Servo Vega booth right now looks like what was on display at the booth, what Servo Vega had this time last year. So if anything is coming out of the reconsolidation of the Servo Vega brands, it hasn't happened yet because it does not look like anything of interest is going on with them yet. And I wanted to talk to the guy because what I wanted to tell him was everyone's asking about it. Everyone is rooting for the return of the legend of Servo Vega. And if they'll bring it back to its former glory, even halfway there, they're going to just blow the market entirely apart because everyone remembers their orange surround drivers from the 1990s and wants some.
I still have
both
some.
home and car. Everyone wants them. And so if they'll just deliver a quality product and just say, hey, we're redoing the brand. It's going to be badass now. It's going to be a quality product and we're going to charge to the nose. They could own the market if they would just go for it.
All right, here's the problem. I talked to Servo Vega at CES. And it was great. I loved seeing some of the stuff. They do have, he did want the home stereo speakers. I knew it. I knew that's what you were talking about. I was like, I think he's talking about the home one. But when I talked to them, this is what I got from them. So this is kind of what I was hearing. Take this for whatever you think. Okay. He made it sound like they're already still really big in car audio. So, he made it seem like, oh, sorry, did the wrong share. He made it seem like, to me, it made it seem like it wasn't as big of a push for them for the car audio. Like they've always been around in car audio. They've always been doing good in car audio. And it might be true. Like that might be the best part of their business. I'm not saying that they're huge in car audio, but I'm saying like that might be the number one part of their business. But I was getting from them is that they weren't really pushing them as much. Now they did come out with a bunch of new home audio stuff, right? Like these tower speakers
with the 300 surrounds, right? That's what people want to see.
And I do have a contact's information. I have his card right here. This is the back side of it, so you can't see the front side, the important stuff. I can. And I might email him to get a pair in for review because I'm curious about them. They do have other home audio stuff too, but this was like kind of their new one. I think they called it their LA series. Yeah, LA 265, which I would assume for 2 6.5-inch. The things I like about it, they're doing an MTM configuration. Now, whether that's designed properly, I don't know, but they're doing an MTM configuration. That's cool. People are going to ask me, how did it sound? It sounded like a speaker in a really big, wide open warehouse. Like, there's no way for me to tell you how it sounded with any truth of it. I will say this. From looking at it, these are only $300, and I don't know if these are each or a pair. Let me put it this way. They looked priced accordingly.
Okay.
So I do not.
So you don't think it's a sleeper? You don't think it's one of those things where they could have sold this for $500 and they're selling it for $300? You think it's a $300 speaker?
I think a $300 speaker is probably the most they should get out of it. If that's individual. And I don't know if this individual or a pair. Usually these are sold individually, so I'm assuming it's individual. They seem to be not, just from what I was looking at, I didn't get a good look at them. They didn't seem like they had as much bracing as I would like. They didn't seem to be like very thick cabinets, maybe a very resonant cabinet. That's what I got by looking at them. Having said that, I have not tested them. So it was really unfair for me to be able to say that completely. That's why I want to get a pair in to see because I could be completely off basis with this. So I'd like to get a pair in, get them looked at. They have all a bunch of stuff. The stuff that was kind of cool that they had is they had some of these, and they were more like home monitors. They had some like home monitor, I guess there's Pro Series, but they had these ska things, which were kind of cool. And the ska series would like allow you to transmit like wirelessly to all these different speakers, which is kind of cool. Yeah. I like the idea of it.
It's a cool idea.
It was for pro audio. Yeah. Where you don't have to run a bunch of wires and stuff. Yeah. I like it. But yeah, I don't think we have like a new awakening of a company that all of a sudden is coming up with like the best value out there, but they're also not asking a lot for their speakers.
There we go. So hit my screen. I want to show you what I've got here. All right. So this is a time lapse I took with my GoPro. So Sundown Audio was there, and they did a training session on how to recone a subwoofer. So if you've ever reconed a speaker before, it was fun to watch. It does not look anywhere near as intimidating as I thought it would be. And the guy from Sundown was awesome. I messaged him ahead of time and to see if I could bring in a camera, and he let me put up a GoPro right in his face, basically. Right, you can see his GoPro, the light from his GoPro right there. So right beside his, and a second camera. And this is the coolest part about it. They're reconing these two subwoofers, and they brought up someone from the audience, and they just kind of like drew names out of a hat kind of thing. I think it was raffle tickets or something. And so this young kid, he's like 20, he's just getting started in the car audio world, got to come up and got one-on-one training on how to recone a subwoofer. And Sundown let him take home the subwoofer that he built right there on the spot. So to give you an idea of the way they did this, since grinding off the old...
Is that Brian? Right
yes.
There?
Yeah, cool. Great guy, nice guy, friendliest guy ever. I like him a lot. So I've never met him before, and he was just really gracious to me and just let me stick a camera up there in his way. And he's got some videos on YouTube, he said, where he's shown the whole process. To give you an idea, they went ahead and they ground off all the old material before the show, because that makes a huge mess and you're in a hotel conference center. So it just kind of like, sets off smoke alarms and stuff. So they couldn't do that. But the actual process of gluing the thing down, if he were just going for it without trying to show someone how to do it, he could have done it in easily 30 minutes or less. And so reconing a subwoofer looks a lot easier than I thought it would be. And they sell, and of course, this is training for professionals. They were saying, look, if you're running a shop and you got customers who are blowing their subwoofers, because people buy Sundowns and throw mountains of power at the darn things, order some recones and start rebuilding subwoofers and selling recones and making some money. And anybody could do that. Anybody could order the parts and sell and recone subwoofers and make money. So I kind of thought it was cool that right here is this little compact business idea. and it was really cool. This young kid who got to build a subwoofer right there on the spot and take it home with him. So I had a good time watching that process.
I'll try to reach out to him in the next day or two, see if Serwin Vega will send me a pair of the LA 265s. Why not? I mean, I'm interested too. I mean, $300. I mean, they're cheap, and that's the most expensive pair. That's so. Nate Jones asked a question. He said, "Justin, you missed my first question. Stop ignoring me, Justin."
This is a question for you, man, and it's your stream, so you're the one.
It's for you. Have you heard of the La Dolce Audio open baffles? They use a 15-inch Eminence coaxial with an open back.
This is your wheelhouse, man. This is a question for you. I have no idea. I've never heard of a La Dolce. I've never gotten close to a 15-inch Eminence coaxial driver, so that's a question for you, man.
Live in La Dolce. How's that song go?
Live in La Vida Loco. Local?
Oh yeah, live in La Dolce Loco. That's it.
What does La Dolce translate to? That's
La Dolce. The Dolce.
It's feminine, la, right? Isn't that right? I barely passed Spanish in high school, so I'm not qualified to.
Oh, I think this is Italian. Yeah. La Dolce Vita is an Italian phrase meaning the sweet life. So I'm guessing the sweet, because Dolce, yeah, I bet it's sweet. Dolce.
So there's a film from the 1960s called La Dolce Vita. I learned that from Google. So there you go. Because I can Google things now because I've wired up my internet connection and it doesn't crash every time I pull up a web browser off the screen.
So Nate, if you haven't got neither one of us have heard those particulars, that particular design before. I like the idea of DIY open baffles. Interestingly enough, there's a lot of high-end speaker manufacturers that do open baffle that use 15-inch Eminence drivers. Yeah. Now they're usually designed custom for them, but one of those that I can think of that I believe uses Eminence is Spatial Audio.
Oh, he's got all the parts sitting around. He should build them. Build them and tell us.
Yeah, build them, and then invite us over so
build
we can
them.
listen to them.
Build them, absolutely. Eminence. I need to give to Kentucky sometime and tour their factory, because there are. You'd be surprised how many speakers that you run across in your day-to-day life are Eminence drivers. Pretty much any pro audio, it's an Eminence driver.
Yeah.
Yeah, the music shop in town where my kids have taken music lessons, they build speakers and build pro audio equipment and put up for concerts and whatnot. And you walk through their back storeroom on the way to practice, and they've got stacks of Eminence drivers of all types just piled up everywhere.
You should see my wife hates what I do sometimes. Especially right now, because I'm like doing 3 or 4 builds. Someone asked me, how is the crossover build for those Swans coming? I haven't even tested the drivers yet, because I got sick, and we talked about this. I got sick. Me and Justin talked about this behind the scenes. I got sick with what I thought was food poisoning. It ended up being more of a stomach bug. It took me a lot longer to get over than I thought it would. Thought it was going to be like a day. It took me like a week. It's ridiculous. Having said that, I haven't even looked at it yet. I do plan to, and I plan to do a new crossover. So some people asked me why I want to do a new crossover for that, and there's no reason necessarily. I mean, I like to, I look at crossovers a little bit differently than some other people sometimes, and so I'd like to see where mine might be different than what's already out there, because there are already some designs out there for these. So what he's talking about is the Hi-Vi Swans DIY 3.1 kit,
yes,
right? And there are some, but let me show you. Let me see if I can find.
While you're digging that up, I'll tell the backstory. Apparently, the story amongst the DIY community is that it's a great speaker set, but the crossover leaves something to be desired, and a better design crossover gives you a better result. And so Nick's trying to work that out. And there's someone's got a web page that'll show you what to do. So off you go.
So here's one website that has some, and there's some really good. I think what he did was really good. I try not to look too much into this because I don't want to see what he's done per se, because then it might influence what I
Mhm.
do, right? Which I don't want. But you can see, like, this is the traditional one that came with it. It starts at 85 and then it goes up almost to 95. So it's got that huge sloping up.
Mm,
I guess if you're listening way off axis, it might be okay. But really, man, with all the reflections in the room, it just sounds way too bright
gotcha.
for me. The crazy thing is, the bass is actually pretty darn good on this speaker. Like, the bass is good, sounds good. So if you get that mid range down some, you can. Now he did the ultimate Ceylon, which is a really I might be saying that wrong, Ceylon mod. And there's one thing that I would like to change on this for sure. Although I don't want to just change one thing on his, but I'll show you what I'm looking at. I already shared this with my patrons.
Yeah.
So if you're a patron,
You
you
already
already
know it.
know
If you're
this.
the patrons always get, because
You
the
already know it.
patrons have
You already
been
know it.
getting behind the scenes shots of Knowledge Fest all weekend. Every day they got, like, they're probably tired.
Mhm.
It's like, stop posting pictures.
And my patrons always get Knowledge Fest. Oh, okay, that was dumb. All right. So this was his mod, and one of the things that you'll notice is that the woofer plays really far into the mid range.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a really steep slope. Now, most people that would look at this circuit would look at this and say, "Oh, it's a second order circuit." It's not. It's a first order with a Zobel, and that's why you're getting that really long, drawn out, your woofer's playing into your mid range more, and that's why you're getting this big hump right here in the mid range. I'm really sensitive to that area. Really, between 1,000 and 2,000 hertz. I mean, it's not much. It's like maybe 2 or 3 decibels, so it's not like crazy. But I'd like to get that down by using an actual second order on there. Obviously, when you do that, it will change the impedance because a Zobel is designed to affect the
So
impedance.
my question
So
is, who else is Googling Zobel and just found out that it's a mountain range in
Zobel is
Ethiopia as well as a crossover network?
Zobel is actually known as is it a mountain range for real?
Yeah, I thought Zobel was your buddy. You built that 10-inch downfiring speaker.
Zarbo.
Zarbo. I didn't realize that Tom Zarbo had a crossover network named after him.
No, Zobel is a capacitor and a resistor, and they're used in a way that takes down your impedance peaks so that you can get like a normalization of your impedance. It
looks like it is a capacitor and a resistor wired in series to each other, and that series set wired in parallel to the driver. At least that's what the Wavecore website image is showing. And that does what to the impedance? It lowers the impedance.
It changes your impedance peaks.
Okay.
Yeah. So that way you can keep your impedance wherever you want. So that's really important with like older amplifiers, right? So if you're like a class A amplifier guy, you really need to keep your impedance in check. Class D actually does such a good job with the impedance that some people don't even pay as much attention to the impedance as they used to, which is interesting. So that will affect your impedance, but it also takes away the second order. And for me, like when I'm looking at that crossover and I'm looking at it, which it looks like a fantastic crossover, the guy did a great job. And as far as I know, everyone that's used it loves it. So I don't have anything bad to say about the crossover, but for me, when I'm looking at that, I'm like, no, I want to do a second order there because I want to try to get that 1 to 2 kilohertz down more and make it a little bit more even. I think I can make it even more even.
Well, there we go. Nick, I'm looking at the time. We've been at it for an hour.
Yep, we're done. We're
not done. There's always that last thing we have to do before we finish.
Yes, I want to thank my parents for this moment and my wife, who's so Justin, what do you have coming out on your channel,
right now I am busy cutting down and editing clips from Knowledge Fest. I'm trying to figure out kind of how best to package it. I've gotten 2 or 3 of the vendors that were there that brought cars. let me sit down and just do like an interview and a walkthrough. There was a car that I think Cardio Fabrication showed on his channel that had 12, 10-inch, 8-inch subwoofers in the trunk of a car. So, and that guy
Wow.
sat down with me and like really explained what all he did to his car. It's a beautiful car. There's a Corvette that was full of Alpine gear and that big truck. And so I've got a bunch of pictures and clips and stuff with people kind of talking about their cars. And my plan is to take the clips of
cool.
individual ones and kind of put them out as either shorts or on TikTok or Instagram or something like that. And then kind of make a video that's kind of, the Cars of Knowledge Fest. But I've got to come up with a catchier title than that, because I don't know if anyone even knows what Knowledge Fest is and would watch them. And probably like an overall video, because I want to do a video of that recone process and get it and really show that.
It would be cool though if you did a video on like that one car with the 8 subs, depending on whatever the information is, if you could do it around that.
I got about
I don't
after
know
I trimmed out the pauses and ums and ahs and stuff, I had about a 3-minute clip with that with some B-roll and the description of it. And that car, the subs sound impressive, right? But there's actually more power on the front stage. It has like 3,000 watts on the front stage, and so the subs. I mean, I imagine it was deafening in there as well. So
that's
a lot of people with laptops sitting in their cars tuning, trying to get them all just right.
So have you ever wondered if you should buy furniture off of Amazon?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
right? I bought some theater seats off Amazon, half the price of Valencia.
Oh,
Half the price of Valencia.
okay. And you're going to find out if they're any good
I'll
or
have a
not.
review out. I'll have a review out tomorrow to find out if that was a huge mistake or a huge money savings.
Yeah, or deal or no deal.
Deal or no deal. Yeah, it'll be very interesting. So you'll want to catch that. I actually have quite a few video reviews out this week because I've been sick and I've been trying to get these reviews out and I haven't been able to. So they've been pushing them behind. So I'm going to try to get a couple out. I've recorded the theater seat one right before we got online, so I'm going to be editing that tonight. And I also have the new remote control by Sofa Baton.
Okay.
The new X1S.
Sofa stick.
And I have the X1. They literally look identical. And the question is it worth upgrading to? Is it a good universal remote control? It's cool. And then I got a bunch of other videos. I don't know which ones I'm going to do, so I don't want to say which ones I'm getting to because I really don't know. But I do have some car audio head units that might be coming up this week. So for all you car heads, I like it. Now they're the Android and Linux based ones.
Gotcha. It's been a while since it's been a little while since I've gotten a video pumped out. The last one I did was of my amp rack. So if you haven't seen the amp rack video, you're going to want to check that out. I think the amp rack turned out pretty good. Did some nice clean wiring. So evenly spaced out the cut out a spacer with my laser and evenly spaced out the zip ties, that kind of thing.
Awesome. All right, guys, make sure that you subscribe to both me and Justin, the DIY audio guy, so you get some great content. And don't forget to come next week on Justin's channel so you can get those questions answered. All right, guys.